We've had a couple of interesting instruments come in for repair, and this is one of them. This is a Gibson Chet Atkins Tennessean, and I don't see this sort of thing very often, and thought I'd do a bit of a video. The repair is relatively straightforward. It has not been looked at for many years, and the frets need levelling and looking at and cleaning up. And the biggest issue is that the nut has been desecrated, is the only word I can use. Somebody has attacked this nut with a rat tail file or something, and as well as rounding the slots that way so that the scale length is effectively a mil or two longer, they've waggled their slotting file that they were using at the same time, and at the ends of the slots the strings are loose, and it's terrible. Now the client has asked us to try and keep the original nut if at all possible, and I'm going to be doing a quick and dirty repair using, well, powder and glue effectively. You could do it with, well, bone powder is the most commonly used. Ebony dust, even plastic dust will do it if it's a plastic nut that you're working with. And I am going to use bone dust and repair the nastiness that we have here. So, onwards. You can hear the tink tink tink, and that is a very good sign of a nut that is just not happy with its life. It's creaking and groaning and moaning as I relax these strings. Yes, if you're going to attack your nut, do it. Look at this. I've just loosened the string as much as it will go, and it's not actually moving in the nut slot. Now what they've done is they realised what a total cock-up they made of this, and they've filled it. They've tried. Somebody's tried to fill these horrible nut slots with sellotape.
What?
Oh my goodness. Well, there we go. In amazingly poor condition. I can't actually, on the camera, see where the slots are. There's so much rubbish going on. That one had sellotape in it, and the rest of it has got what looks like raw super glue, and they've let the super glue go on the side there. It's not ideal, so we shall fix it. I'm going to clean up all the mess that we've been left with here. Since we're trying to save this nut, I need to clean the slots out, or should I say wide gaping chasms, and get all the rubbish out so that we can rebuild them properly. Turns out the only way to clean up these slots properly and get rid of all the rubbish that is in them is to use the same tool, see all that they did. And that is a rat tail file. And I can feel and hear the difference between bone and soft, gluey, mucky residue. The tone of this guitar must have changed drastically when they did this to the nut. Now, the nut has been lacquered in place. There's a film of lacquer over each end, and I don't want to remove it in case I damage that in any way, because it would damage the lacquer and it just wouldn't look right. So I need to mess around with lots of super glue in lots of slots and I do not want to damage the fretboard in any way whatsoever. So some Renaissance wax, and using this as a tool, I'm going to try and get it on the fretboard, but not on the... Stop being a fool, Ben. I'm going to mask off the nut so we don't get any wax on the nut. And then, and definitely not in the nut slots, because that's where we're really aiming for. So there we go. I suspect that I'm not going to actually get any super glue on the fretboard anyway. But if I do, it now will not stick. And I'm certainly not going to get any on there. And this Renaissance wax is lovely because it's very easy to remove and leaves no residue or anything like that. So I've let that sit there for a while, and now I need to make some bone dust. While I was cleaning these out, I had a good sniff, and there's one thing I know the smell of. It's bone as it's being filed down. That's very distinctive. Anyway, onwards. When I'm making bone dust, I start out with a piece of paper to catch it, of course, and crease the paper so you've got something easy to deal with. There is an issue if you use sandpaper. Sandpaper is paper with some sort of grit on it. That grit falls off and will contaminate your sample. I use a fine file to get the consistency dust that I require. And effectively this is a little piece of well, ivory actually, hippo ivory I think, or possibly warthog tusk, one of the two. And you sit here and you file away until you have a big enough pile, and considering the amount of nut slots that we've got here, it's going to be a rather large pile. If your file isn't clean, you can also get lots of rubbish in there, but we seem to be doing okay this time. There is a trick to doing this. Once you've got your horribly deformed slot clean and ready to go, put in a drop of glue. Very carefully. And my piece of paper, you can either feed it in like that or pick up a pinch. I tend to pick up a pinch when I'm working like this. And as you pile your super glue as you pile your bone dust onto the slot, the super glue tends to start curing pretty much immediately. It's called an exothermic reaction, which means that as it cures, it gives off heat. And the thing is, while it is curing, I'm using the back of an old blunt scalpel to push it firmly down into the slot. And in this case, I'm also sort of moving sideways to push it out into the bits where people went like that when they were filing. It's very important to put the glue in first, because otherwise you may well end up with a patch of uncured dust underneath, and therefore your nut will sound wrong. Come on then, oh, my bit of paper's too big. Okay, and that's building up. That's been built up a couple of times, and I suspect I've got enough in there. But what I'm going to do is, using my relatively blunt old scalpel blade, just pare away the stuff on the top so I can see exactly where we're actually sitting. And I do still have a slot, but it's certainly much higher. And because I've been pushing down as it cured, it should be okay. Now when the time comes to re-cut that after it's been curing overnight, I will feel if there's any inconsistencies under that through my tool, and if necessary I'll put in some more finish. For now, however, it's on to the next slot. Dab of glue and a pinch of bone dust. Push it in. The bone dust acts as some sort of a superglue accelerator, and it's a trick if you ever want to cure superglue rapidly, and it doesn't matter what it looks like, chuck a bit of fine dust on it. Just don't do that if it's stuck to your hand, because it will burn. Here is the result. A powdery old mess. But it's not going to take all that much to clean off. Got one of our, we make our own fret leveling files, and every now and then we have one that doesn't end up perfectly flat, and these end up in the workshop for use in other jobs, and they're incredibly useful, really. So use this fret leveling file to file away the excess. Obviously I'm being very careful not to bump the headstock itself, because that would be sacrilegious, really. And here you can see all of the extra holes and bits of rubbish that we've got. Sharp chisel. Again, I'm not actually touching the fretboard, I'm just working on the excess glue that we've got. Another option for this job would be to get some masking tape down there and use a file sideways. Now the thing is, I really don't want to change the position of this of the nut, because that messes with intonation, obviously. And it's coming together. I have nut slots to be working with, but quite frankly they've been so messed around with that all I'm going to use as my starting points are the two outside ones. And I'm using one of my competitors' fret slotting guides to help decide where to go. Of course, we have a better design in mind for our own tool range at some point in the future, hopefully by the time you're watching this video, but it's going to take a while. There we go, I've marked those out, and yeah, the Gibson nut slots were actually in the wrong place for a couple of them anyway. Now, we'll do that, and I need to go and find a razor saw to cut some slots. Lovely little razor saw. It works out at being about a 10 gauge string. Can you hear the concentration in my voice? And these are just preliminary cuts, so I've got something to follow with the files. Now there is another trick in order to work out where to put how deep to cut these nut slots, but I'm about to level these frets, so I can't do it right now. All I'm going to do is leave it as is now. I've marked where I want to be, and I've used my razor saw to mark further, and we'll finish making this nut after we've done some fret leveling. It's just oh, lovely. I'm going to go and get some white spirit or something to remove the wax, and then it is on to a fret level, because he's got these dimples and divots and things throughout the guitar.